Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Sorry we're getting started just a little bit late. Very grateful to have a couple of staff from the city of Asheville here. First, we're going to hear from James Shelton, Community Development Division Manager, about some stuff regarding CDBG-DR Action Plan that was just submitted. And then we're going to hear from Clay Mitchell, FAST, Floodplain Assistance Support Team Coordinator, and also Asheville Urban Planner, about what the FAST team is all about. So actually that's redundant, the FAST team, right? Yeah. Okay. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And
who here has not heard of the CDBG-DR program? Y'all haven't heard about it. Okay, looks like some folks have though. Our communications team's done a pretty good job, but maybe we need to work on reaching out a little bit better. So I'm James Shelton. I'm the community development manager. My main job is to keep us out of hot water with the federal government, which these days is super fun. So I manage a couple. My team manages a couple of grant programs from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I have a background in housing. I worked for HUD for 6.5 years before coming to Buncombe County. Worked at the county for a few years, and I've been at the city since 3 weeks before the storm. So it's been a fun time to start a new job with the city. It's been 7 months, so it's been a wild ride. So every year we manage a few programs. One is our community development block grant program. We use those funds for community projects targeted to low to moderate income neighborhoods. We get about $1 million a year in that funding. We also have our home investment partnership program. We get about another $1.5 million through that program, and that's for specifically affordable housing development. So we're about a $2.5 million a year program that we run in my office, where we do grants for housing, grants for community projects. Back in January, we found out that we would receive a $225 million grant, which, if y'all do the math, is about 100 times more than what we normally manage. We're super excited to have these resources, and we're being very, very diligent about how we're going to implement this. The implementation starts with an action plan. What I'm going to present to y'all today is exactly what I gave to City Council on Tuesday last week, where City Council approved our plan, and it has now been submitted to HUD for their review and approval. So the feds have our plan, and they're doing their review, and we hopefully get a quick approval from them. So since Helene, we've been working really hard to activate resources from FEMA, the state, as well as this program. What this does is it looks at what our community's unmet needs are as a result of the storm. So what did the storm do? What resources have come to help us? And what's remaining? And that's what this program looks to address. We had a robust community engagement process that informed what's in our plan. We had 6 community input opportunities back in February. We launched our draft plan in March. It was out for public comment for 30 days, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but we heard a lot of great feedback from our community on how we might improve the plan. And then on April 8th, we got it approved by council, and now HUD is reviewing it. So once HUD completes their review, they've got 45 days from now, sometime in May. Hopefully we'll get an approval. We'll get a grant agreement in place where we actually have access to the funds, and then start implementing projects later this year. And I apologize if I cruise through this quicker than I did with City Council. Y'all are smart folks. We had a survey back in February where we heard from our community about what our recovery priorities should be. And no surprise, infrastructure was the #1 thing. We all lost water. So infrastructure is top of mind. The next was expanding housing solutions. I think in this room, that's maybe of particular interest. We're going to talk about housing a lot over the next few minutes. So as I mentioned, we did a lot of engagement sessions on this $225 million program. And we heard from a lot of our community members. 105 people participated, 220 people commented online, and we received over 350 official comments during our comment period. The state of North Carolina received a $1.4 billion grant. Exact same program, exact same rules, exact same requirements. We got a $225 million program. We're required to get public comments, so 350 public comments, it's pretty good. The state, in their process, only got 200.
Oh.
We have a lot to say.
We have a lot to say. I'll talk a little bit about the state's program, because the state's program is housing heavy. This is just a sample of comments that we heard from folks in our community. Just want to talk about the state's program a little bit. So this is their $1.4 billion program. $860 million is what they're investing in owner-occupied housing. That is for making repairs and rehab for folks that had damages in the storm across the entirety of Western North Carolina. Our program is specific to the city limits of Asheville. We don't make any investments outside city limits. The state has their program. They're going to be making investments all over the disaster area. But $860 million is what they're going to be doing for home repair and rehab. It's going to be a lot of work to do over the next few years in home repair and rehab. And they're also putting $191 million toward affordable housing development. So that's the multifamily construction program you see there. $807 million for reconstruction and rehab, and then 53 for workforce housing. That's single family is what they're proposing. $53 million for single family development. It's a huge program. And they're in the process right now of getting their plan approved and implementing this over the next couple of years. So when we looked at the type of housing programs that we would want to implement, we take into the context of what the state is doing. The state will be considering projects in the city of Asheville as eligible. So just because we're in the city of Asheville, we've got our own allocation, $225 million with this program. The state is still going to consider projects in the city. So we got to be strategic about the kind of programs we propose. So back in March, this was our draft proposal. We proposed $29 million for housing, $130 million for infrastructure, and $50 for economic revitalization, with some others for planning and public services and administration of the grant over the life of the program. What we heard from our community is that we needed to fund a little bit more in small business support. We needed to do a little bit more in planning, and then do a little bit more in multifamily construction. So we pulled $5 million from our infrastructure program as a result of feedback from our community. And that's where we moved a little bit of funding to be responsive to what our community said we needed to do.
Good question.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, we're allocating as little as we are to housing because we expect some of the state funding. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
But we also are allocating this amount to housing because when you look at what we did was a provision, an unmet needs assessment. So those dollar figures you see in that second column, that's what we estimated to be the need in the city of Asheville. And HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, generally expects that your allocation percentage should align with the percent of need. So what we assessed was a $1.1 billion need. Of that was 2.8% in housing. So if you did 2.8% in housing, out of our $225 million grant, gets you to about 6 million or so. Not enough, right? That's just a grossly insufficient amount of investment in housing for our community. So that's why you see us go a little bit above and beyond that. And HUD is perfectly okay with us putting more toward housing. That's the first word in their name, right? The Department of Housing and Urban Development. So that's how we get to that number, 31 million. We added a little bit more there. And we can talk a little bit about what's in that program. Is a $28 million multifamily housing construction program. And that's to provide gap funding for construction and preservation, rehab of affordable multifamily projects. We're going to provide a little bit more emphasis on projects that can show deeper affordability. We're required with this grant program, 70% of our dollars must benefit low to moderate income residents. This is not just for any kind of willy-nilly project. It's targeted to the benefit of those who have the least in our community. So when we're looking at housing projects, they are intended to be affordable. meaning they're affordable to folks who make 80% area median income or less. Anybody know what 80% AMI is for a family of four? For a family of four in Asheville, it's about $74,000. Yeah, that's 80% area median income. For a single person, I think it's about $53,000 a year is 80% median income. So that's our target population with this program. And with our multifamily housing program, we heard from our community we need to do a little bit more than just targeting that level, but so we're going to target even deeper affordability. And then we're also partnering with the state of North Carolina's program, where they are going to administer their single family reconstruction and rehab program in the city limits of Asheville. We don't have to handle applications. We don't have to do environmental reviews. We don't have to work with contractors and scheduling. They're going to run the whole thing. Homeowners can apply for the program, get hooked up with repairs and reconstruction at their houses that were damaged in the storm, and we're going to pay for the hard costs. All the admin, state of North Carolina is going to take care of that. But with that program specifically, we've worked in close partnership with them to coordinate how we're going to implement that in the city of Asheville. All the other state programs, like for multifamily development, they're going to be rocking and rolling with that as well. But we're just going to let them do that on their own. Infrastructure, that's $125 million we're putting toward infrastructure. So this includes water system improvements, right? Stormwater management, parks and rec, and arts and cultural facilities are included in that. Affordable housing infrastructure. So if we have a neighborhood in our community that could be viable for more housing development, it just lacks the things around it that it needs to support it, we can look at making infrastructure investments so that more housing can be developed in those neighborhoods. Per the zoning though, right? Then we're also looking at commercial district revitalization. So public facility upgrades in our riverfronts, streetscape enhancements, and then emergency sheltering is also a part of infrastructure. I know that that's weird when you think about like emergency homeless shelter. It's a housing thing, right? It's technically in the HUD world, not housing, because emergency shelter is not an address. It's not a residence. You don't live in shelter. You shelter in shelter. It's a service that's provided. So it's not categorized as a housing activity, but in our program, it's emergency sheltering is included in infrastructure because it's a public type facility for a service that's provided. So we are preparing to make investments in emergency homeless shelter using these funds. And the last program, and I'm sorry, I'm cruising through. Y'all don't care about public comment, right? The last one I'll talk about is our economic revitalization program. The reason that the things are highlighted is we increased that by $2 million, small business support. So that's going to be grants or loans for businesses that were impacted by the storm to bring back jobs or retain jobs. And then revitalization of flooded commercial districts. That's for us to make investments in privately owned facilities so that we can further bring back our commercial districts along the Swannanoa River and the French Broad River. It's a very loose kind of idea yet. We want to hear from our flooded commercial districts what that should look like, but we know that it's needed. And then a workforce development program we're proposing to address the need for skilled labor. Anybody in here work in housing, construction? How do you feel about this labor supply in our area?
Subcontractors are tough, especially now. I mean, it was bad before, but now it's basically impossible to find subs, more or less.
This is why we're wanting to make an investment in workforce development so that we can create an opportunity for folks who live here to get skills and be able to come be more subcontractors, plumbers, electricians, everybody that can come help finish those projects that are out there. We want to make sure we're investing locally and making those opportunities for folks to make more money and have more skills and be part of the recovery. So we're proposing $5 million to support that type of activity. Public services, $2 million here. This is intended to reduce barriers to folks to get into housing. So housing counseling services, rapid rehousing initiatives for folks who become homeless and really get them out of that homeless situation and back into a stable housing situation. And then For workforce development, reducing barriers for people to participate in workforce development. We often hear that folks say, well, if I'm working right now, I can't afford to stop working and go to school. Well, hopefully we can help them be able to afford that by providing for paid training programs, helping them with transportation and childcare stipends while they're going to school, and then other wraparound services, whatever that might look like. We're open to ideas. This is another big one. So we proposed a few $1,000,000 here for planning. So this is to update our existing plans, particularly around bringing them into the context of recovery, into the context of our disaster. All the plans that we have at the city were written before the storm. That they have the idea that we want to plan for the next 5-10 years ahead. The next 5 to 10 years look very different than they did 6 months ago. So we're wanting to bring these plans up into the context of what the next 5 to 10 years actually looks like, what we think they look like, who knows. And then also creating some new plans around long-term recovery. So infrastructure recovery plans, housing recovery. And then one thing we heard from our community is community connectivity and resilience. How do we create, structures, not necessarily built structures, but the soft structures of community connection for when disasters happen, making sure people are able to get to resources, making sure people are able to know what they're supposed to do when the power goes out, the cell service goes out, and water's gone and food's gone. Yeah. The last thing I'll talk about is mitigation. Throughout all these activities, housing, infrastructure, economic revitalization, a key component of all the investments we're going to do is making sure that what we're investing in can withstand future disaster events. So we have a whole section in our plan that talks about mitigation strategies. So a lot of that is strengthening for flood resilience and stormwater management, increasing infrastructure resilience, enhancing housing resilience, so particularly prioritizing historically underserved communities with hazard mitigation efforts, and then supporting that economic recovery and risk diversification. Really thinking about how do we support not just a tourism economy or a service economy or a manufacturing type economy, but making sure we have a more diverse economy. Not that we're not diverse, but wanting to do more of that. I won't talk about that. So again, back in January, our little $2.5 million a year program found out we were going to be managing 100 times more than that over the next 6 years. That's how long we have to spend, $225 million. Do the math, it's about $38 million a year. We are actively getting our org chart assessed right now to figure out what's the staffing that we're going to need. I'll run back here in just a second here to this is our final proposal here. That last line down there, administration, $11.25 million for administration. That's a lot. But also we're brought on some professionals who do this work 365 days a year of recovery and working with this program specifically. And they're really good at it and they're not cheap, but they do a really good job. We're also looking at bringing on permanent staff to manage this grant. Well, grant term limited staff, not permanent, but to help us manage this over the long term. So that's where that $11.25 million is going to go. So we're looking to staff up right now. Our action plan has been submitted to the feds as of Wednesday last week. They've got 45 days to review it and approve it. Once they approve it, we can start funding some projects. We're right now, while we're bringing on staff that we need to do this, we're also developing our standard operating procedures around managing this program, establishing our policies on how we're going to make sure that we don't get any further attention from the feds for any kind of thing that they would have a problem with. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any of y'all's questions. Do we want to do questions now, Matt? Does that sound good, or?
That makes sense to do your questions now.
Yeah, sure. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so regarding the infrastructure, we're talking about, stormwater, and what about the roads?
What about roads?
With the NCDOT or something like that, preparing of the roads, make sure that it's like high above, no floodings, easy washed away, bridge. What about those things?
It's a great question. So when we're thinking about roads, the first thing that we're going to look at is, well, who owns the road? Who's responsible for it? So if it's NCDOT, then the state of North Carolina is going to be like the lead agency. And the first thing they're going to do is say, hey, FEMA, what are y'all going to do to help us get our roads back? So if y'all don't know, FEMA has kind of two main branches, two main programs. One is individual assistance, where they're going to give money to you because your house got damaged. They're also going to give money to the city or the state to repair public infrastructure, and that's their public assistance program. So they're going to look at FEMA first to say, come and do an assessment on our road, tell us what the damage was, value, and then let's get the road back to where it was before. And that's where FEMA stops. FEMA gets you back what you lost and goes no further. They also have a mitigation program. Well, they will help you mitigate against future disasters similar to the disaster that you had. So they can make a little bit further investment to say, well, you had a major flooding event. Let's do some work to make sure that the road that we brought back can withstand future flooding events. Our program, this can come in behind that and go a little bit further and say, well, what other type of mitigation do we need to invest in? How do we make that road more interesting or more pedestrian friendly? Things like that. This program is it's kind of like I don't want to say it's a funding of last resort, but it comes behind all those other necessary resources that are coming to help us recover and build back. Does that make sense?
Right, so you guys have a plan in hand where it's gonna work together with the NCDOT with this plan to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Is there going to be some kind of like oversight committee or something that's going to help you guys manage the funds and how things are held?
That's a really good question. And yes, the Housing and Community Development Committee is our standard like council committee that my programs report to. And we expect them to be very involved with this moving forward. We're also standing up an internal structure where it's not James Shelton who gets to make, and it shouldn't be, should not be me who gets to make funding decisions about which projects get funding and which don't. It'll be part of our recovery support function that we've stood up within the city, where we have an economic recovery support function that is internal staff. We have a housing recovery support function. We have an infrastructure one as well, where those are internal staff who will review project proposals and say, these fit within our recovery framework, and then take that to our, either it's housing and community development or it's our recovery team lead for the final go ahead of like, this is what we should do. And any contracts that we enter, there's going to be a ton of contracts. We'll have to go in front of city council as well. So anything, what's the limit, Clay? Is $90,000?
I think so, yeah.
Any contract greater than $90,000 has to go in front of city council for approval. So we don't necessarily have like a clear path of what that transparency looks like, but.
And you are going to be transparent with the community?
Yeah. So we're really excited about what I wish I could show you guys, but other communities that have received this type of grant or been through a disaster have stood up recovery dashboards where you can see a map of your community and see where different investments have been made with FEMA public assistance, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, the HMGP program, as well as with this one. So what we want to do and what we will do is set that up where you'll be able to go in and see every single contract that we funded, every project, how it's been funded, how much has been drawn, how much is remaining. We want to make sure that that's very public. One, because y'all should know this is your money. But two, it helps us with media questions too, or that we can just say, you want to know where the money's gone? It's on the dashboard. Just keeping it simple. Yeah.
And my final question, thanks, I appreciate your time, is when it comes to helping the lower to medium class populations, excuse me if I'm not saying that correctly, have you gotten to a place where you understand for housing what each unit will cost and if it actually does fit in, especially for the lower income families, if it actually is going to be affordable for them, because we've had a lot in this town. People come in and say, oh, we're gonna build you affordable housing. And affordable housing looks like $350,000 a unit.
Yeah.
And that's not affordable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so my question is have you guys figured out what exactly that cost is and does it actually fit into the lower income housing?
So to make things affordable to those income that income bracket of population requires a ton of public subsidy. So it's I think we set our maximum subsidy limit at $250,000 a unit. Now that is totally anticipated to be in partnership with other funding sources. None of the projects that we're going to implement this will really act alone, particularly in housing. So like when we do an affordable housing project, we usually expect that there's going to be tax credits involved. There's going to be private debt involved. There's going to be other grant programs as well as this one on top. So our max will be like $250,000 that we'll do per unit. But when we're looking at what's affordable, it's not just you get to say it's affordable. It's affordable very specifically to if whatever your income level is, you're not paying more than 30% of your income toward rent. That's the definition of affordable. So you meet the income qualification, 80% AMI or less. Your family of four makes $74,000 or less a year, and your rent requires you to pay less than 30% of your income, then that is the definition of affordability. So that's kind of where our definition, that whenever we make any kind of housing deal, that's the threshold we have to see being met, whether it's through tax credits reducing the rent that developers are charging to that unit, or it's through some other type of subsidy program where people are receiving housing vouchers or some other rental assistance subsidy to make it affordable to them. But it's a hard, fast definition that like, you don't just get to say, yeah, I'm going to build affordable housing and it's $350,000. No, it's affordable to whom and at what level. And we're real specific about that. So thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
So speaking of the housing, obviously there's not a lot of raw dirt in the city of Asheville. And so do you anticipate doing infill where you're buying lots, tearing down, doing single family development, or is it going to be mostly multifamily development?
So with our program, it will be mostly multifamily development. The state will be doing their workforce development program. Workforce development, let me bring the states back up. Yeah, workforce housing for homeownership is a $53 million program. They're going to do not just in Asheville, but across all of the disaster affected area. Asheville is targeted, as is Buncombe County, because we were most impacted in this storm. But as far as our program is concerned, we're very focused on affordable multifamily rental construction.
Any idea of the size units or like the size of the building or?
Usually our definition is like 7 units minimum. So that can have a lot of, it can look like many different things. We reduced, because of public feedback that we heard, our minimum per project investment in this was originally at $1 million. We reduced that down to $500,000 per project so that we can see opportunities to we can maybe fit into some of those smaller developments. But generally with multifamily, we're thinking like 7 units or more.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how do you get, like as a builder, is there a place that you could learn a little bit more about getting hooked up with the state as one of their contractors? And then the other question would be is, will there be any preference to minority owned or like, woman owned businesses as far as builders?
It's a great question. As far as the state program, that's a really good question. I would ask that I don't think they've launched how that's going to work yet, but I would ask Land of Sky Association of Realtors to kind of be that megaphone of here's how you folks can get connected to that. Because when they do launch, what they're going to need is a ton of contract work. There's going to be a lot of inspectors that they're going to need. There's going to be a lot of subs for folks to go in, look at the housing that was damaged, go in and do the work, follow up with inspections to say it was done, and then close that out. So I don't have that information. I don't think they've actually launched that yet, but that's how it will work is if you're a homeowner, your home was damaged in the storm, you go to the state's website, you say, here's what my insurance did for me, here's what FEMA's done for me, I still have damage that needs to be repaired. Hey, state, can you hook me up with a contractor to come in, and they're going to be that connector and financer between residents and contract work to come in and do that repair. It's not live yet, but that is coming, and I would hope that you guys can help the state kind of be a megaphone for connecting folks to that.
The home builders.
The home builders, yeah. To your second question about prioritizing minority and women-owned businesses, unfortunately, the current administration has encouraged us to not really use that type of language. What we've been encouraged to do is to just follow the Civil Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act, which is still law. When we published our draft plan back at the beginning of March, we included language, which is standard language for most contracts that we do with federal grant programs, that we ask any contractor or developer to show that they are doing equitable outreach for contracting with minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses. So we included that language in our draft plan, and the HUD secretary himself had an issue with it and went very public with that back in March, and asked us to remove that language from our plan. So we removed that specific language, but we are still required by all federal law to have equitable outreach to all businesses, so all contractors. So nothing's really changed. We just had to change the language. Hope that answers your question. Any other questions on this program? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question. I may have missed it, but so the money was, the 225 million was presented, I don't know what word to use, in January. Are y'all feeling like that money is actually going to come to fruition in light of the last few months of federal?
Yeah, I do.
You do feel like that.
Yeah, I have every faith. I have every faith that this money is not at risk. It was.
Okay.
It's appropriated by Congress, signed into law by the president, but with it being law we have zero anticipation. We've actually had really good support from our congressional representatives, our members of Congress. Whether you agree with them politically or not, have actually done a very good job of representing Western North Carolina and getting resources allocated to our area as well as preserved for our area. So we're actually pretty grateful for the amount of support we've gotten from our elected officials. But to answer your question, I share that anxiety, but I have every faith that these funds are real and aren't going away. I think I'll probably end my question. I want to give Clay, who's going to be talking about our FAST team, some time to do his bit, and so y'all can ask questions of Clay. I think are you pretty flexible with time? Yeah, I am too. So I'll be hanging around until maybe about 12:15, but I'm going to let Clay kind of take over. So thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning. This is the first time I kind of maybe gave the council a 3-slide upgrade. That was limited to 3 slides, which is really tough. This is not 3 slides. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, because the people that are involved in this entity are really what it's all about. And so I feel like it's an obligation when you speak publicly in Nashville to talk about your connections to Asheville and how long you've lived here. And I've lived here for 3.5 years. My father lives here. My grandfather and my grandmother met here when he came here after World War II with tuberculosis. My great-great-grandfather lived on Klingman, and my great-great-great-great-grandfather is Zebediah Candler. So that kind of buffers against the fact I've only lived here for 3.5 years. I know that's important to everyone. Prior to this, I had a 25-year career as an attorney and a planner. I spent the last 7 years in the academic world. This is the first municipality I've ever worked for that's had more than one staff member in the planning department. So it was a real interesting experience for me to come to this. I was the town planner for Newmarket, the town planner for Epping, and that was it. So I did everything. It was a very interesting world to be kind of put into a very contained role with the city. And in fact, my first project that I reviewed and shepherded through the entire process is the work you're seeing down here on Restaurant Court. That was my first project. That's a 100% affordable, income restricted housing development, 80, 60, and 40, I believe. Great project to learn the complicated process that North Carolina has. During Helene, I spent 3 weeks, easily 6.5 days a week, driving around the Department of Public Works Ford F-550, which is the largest vehicle I've ever driven, delivering water all over the city. And I learned a lot about who I was and what people were going through, and how none of us could be prepared for this. I've written hazard mitigation plans for communities, and we kind of just rubber stamp them, and you cannot prepare for this. And the immediate aftermath was 3 weeks driving a water truck around. Then we finally started getting back into our offices, and everybody looked shell-shocked. We didn't know what to do. We're planners. We sit around and plan things. There's no planning. Now we're reacting. And that was a tough period. It was a tough period for a lot of my colleagues. And then the questions started hitting. Well, what do we do? When do we build back? How do we build back? What permits do we need? So we're going to go from James's conversation down to very focused, individualized work that we're doing to help our business owners and our property owners who have been impacted by the flood, and how they come back. And that's what this team is all about. So this is the area we're primarily focused in. It's a pretty decent, and by the way, if this is a cool resource. If you go to our city map, Asheville, when you put that in Google, it corrects it to Map Ashfield. So I call it Map Ashfield, but it's actually Map Asheville. And we have in the layers the flyover that I think Noah did the day after. And I know this is kind of triggering and disaster, but this is where I work now. 100% of my work is now focused in this area, dealing with building and business owners and helping them get back. So when you zoom in, you can see the specific event. So that's the municipal golf course. That's the area of Swananoa. We see the parking lots covered in mud. This is a really powerful image of what we're dealing with. I also had the opportunity to do assessments, building assessments. FEMA requires us to go look at buildings, and I'm going to explain a lot about that. This is the area I got. There were places where we were on lots, and we're looking at aerial photos, and we're realizing that there used to be a building there. And so it was a very powerful experience. It was at this point that I needed a break. It's hard to take on the collective trauma and actually care. And that was when I learned, okay, I've been a bureaucrat for a few years. I'm no longer a bureaucrat. I'm somebody who cares. I have to help. I want to do this. And so when the city came to me and said, we'd like you to coordinate this unique effort that we're going to come up with that we think can help, I jumped at it. I like big problems. I like being a part of the solution. And so that's what happened back in January. So we had this team. Now, the city came to me with the first acronym, which was the Floodplain Assistance Team. And I was not cool with that because I didn't want to be a part of the FAT team. So not going to work. And so we came up with the FAST acronym. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but it forces us to keep on our toes because we are responsible for being responsive, transparent, and respond to people's needs as quickly as possible. So we forced ourselves into a position where if we don't live up to our acronym, people are going to make fun of us. And what really, really pulled me in was when the council and the city manager's office said, we want you to be empathetic. That's a weird place for a government regulator to be, but it's a place I like. And I could channel all of that trauma that I had witnessed, all the pain I had heard. I spent the day before trying to put sandbags in front of my friend's gallery down in River Arts District, and the water went 12 feet above our sandbags. So it's affected me indirectly, watching your friends. I remember going out trying to find their paintings so that we could clean them off because they put them in the rafters and the water went all the way up to the second floor. Long story short, this friend is opening a new gallery in The Wire probably in 2 weeks. And so she's back. That's That's the kind of stuff that is about recovery. And so our job here is to help people who have been impacted that way, whose buildings have been damaged, who have all these new requirements that in order to recover, to be that empathetic first contact. This is unique in my understanding. There are cities that have things like ombudsmen, which is ombudspersons, who try and help people through the permitting process. This is an entire team of people from multiple departments who come together, whose sole job is to assist people and help them hear their stories, give them resources. We've become experts in a lot of the different programs, like the debris removal, the hazard mitigation grant program, which I'll talk a little bit about. All of that is meant to kind of channel through our group. And I'm going to run through a lot of data, which is kind of boring, but you can at least see the activity of this team. So our number one mission, which we were started on January 21st. Our number one mission was to deal with a backlog of permits that were on hold that nobody knew what to do. And there were 85. And these were a lot of commercial developments, big commercial developments. You know, the big corporations, they've been through this, and so they know. And so they immediately get in there and they start doing. We do not know. We didn't have classes on how you deal with floodplain demolition permits, what's the requirement if you build back? What if your building was built before the requirements of floodplain compliance? All these things were new to us. And so we had a rapid education on how to do that. And these are the kind of topics that we deal with. We help people with demolitions, debris removal, people who want to do temporary uses. Probably seen the tent down where Plead Winery used to be. That's a completely temporary use. It's a very unique thing. All the permits. What if people want to do improvements beyond just recovering? And then all of these other programs that are available to help people. The hazard mitigation grant is a very interesting program. This is the one where you can actually get assistance to comply with the floodplain regulations or have your property bought out at voluntarily if you've been flooded over and over again. And that's a big program that's ramping up in importance as people kind of consider what their options are moving forward. This is the program that somebody made some weird comment that FEMA's going to take your property and mine for lithium or something underneath it. That's just not true. No. If we acquire a property through this grant, it has to either be for open space or for some kind of flood-related mitigation, putting in stormwater infrastructure or something like that. All of this is about minimizing further harm. And so we are the first kind of gateway into all of these different opportunities. So for me, I have to think in images, and this is my triangle. I like that's the back to the 3-slide thing. Square's too weird. So we're facilitating and assisting in the permitting process. A lot of people, some people have, oh, I'm doing electrical work or I'm getting a new bathroom in. This is everything. You know, I have to demo part of my building, and then I need every single permit. And that's a lot for people to take on. A lot of people are having a hard time finding contractors who can help them. Not all the contractors understand what's required. The vast majority of our meetings are not only with the property owners, we always want there, but also we ask them, bring your contractor so that we can talk with them all at the same time as well. Like I already said, the empathetic support, this is what brought me into the team, willing to do this. And then on the other side, we have to help city staff. Everybody who's working at the city now, and it's less people than were working there before, is to have their day-to-day work, and then they have all this other stuff on top of it. So our job is to kind of support our own staff as well where needed. This is the process we're simplifying, right? That's not going to be on the test. So what's going on? All right, here's what is creating a little bit of confusion. And why do we have all these extra regulations? What is this issue with substantial damage? Why are there new requirements on the permit? Do I have to elevate my building? All of this comes from the fact that we participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. We did it voluntarily. And what that requires is that you have the ordinance that's driving all this action and confusion. It's the floodplain management regulations that we have, our ordinance. The benefits are people get flood insurance. The other is we get all the additional support that FEMA provides that is well beyond what communities would get if they didn't participate in this program. So you're seeing the benefits that are associated with the additional regulation, I guess, the challenge the benefits by far outweigh the challenge. There may be individual situations where people feel really burdened, but overall, the benefits, I think, in my observation in the last 3 months, have been severely or significantly above the challenges or the additional layers of regulation. So residents will continue to maintain access to flood insurance after this because of our participation. We get additional support that is tied to our participation, not only from HUD, but the EPA as well as the SBA. The disaster assistance that you see, these numbers coming in, are because of our participation in this program. And additional federal guarantees on mortgages are provided because of this ability to participate in this program. So, as time moves forward, people may say things like, I have to do all this extra work because I'm in the floodplain. This is why, right? We also want to minimize damage over and over again, these floods. This is what gets everybody all excited, right? This is what we're dealing with. We are required under our participation in this program to determine whether buildings have been substantially damaged. If a building has been substantially damaged, when it comes back, it must be compliant with the floodplain regulations, okay? If a building is determined to be substantially damaged, it must come back in compliance with our floodplain regulations. If it's a residence, that means it has to be elevated, or the living portion of the house has to be elevated. If it's a commercial structure, it can either be elevated or flood-proofed to 2 feet above the base flood elevation, all right? That's the thing that gets people excited. Now, what is that all about? We assess all those buildings. I told you that that was my area over in Shenandoah River to look at these buildings. We go out, we inspect the building, we have to assess the damage, where the flood had been, how long the flood had been, what is the amount of damage to the systems in the building, and then we put that in a tool that FEMA provides called the Substantial Damage Estimator. And this has a numerator and a denominator. Very simple fraction, right? The cost to repair the building back to its pre-flood condition over the pre-damage building value. If it's greater than 50%, the building is substantially damaged. The key is this is an estimator, right? It's not rockets, it's not science. We don't have the ability, and nor does FEMA expect us to be able to go out and do an appraisal on every single building for a month ago or 3 months ago. Nor do we have the ability to go inside the building and look at every single piece of equipment that needs to be replaced and the work that needs to be done to determine what the costs are. So we do this estimator tool, which pulls in the county assessed value of the building and our estimate for the systems and spits out the equation. We are trying to communicate that to everybody who's been impacted because you can respond. That's not the end of it. We need better information. This group is probably very familiar with this joke, right? How you view your house. You know, the tax assessor thinks it's the Taj Mahal. You think it's reasonable. Everybody has different views, right? So I'm pretty sure all of us are, comfortable paying taxes on what the county appraises our building at because it lowers our taxes. But we all know that that's not even close to the value. And so we will take information from a building owner and change that denominator. If the value of the building is higher, that means that the cost of work that you can do and still stay below 50% drops, right? Because I don't mean it in a kind of confrontational way, but you're attacking that assumption, which is fair. And so getting a contractor in and say, okay, yeah, you guys said it was going to be 60%. Here's the list of the actual work and how much it would cost. It's really only 30%. Guess what? That building is now no longer substantially damaged. And they don't have to come back in full compliance with the floodplain regs. So we've helped a lot of people understand that and helped them get through that process to where they went from, oh my God, I'm going to have to elevate my building, which is everybody thinks everything has to be elevated. That's not the case, only residents. All the way to, I can just build my building back and continue to operate my business, and it's not going to take a huge long time to do it. Here's some of the work that we've done. So this is the number of buildings that we have assessed. And this is a 6-month period, right? So 826 buildings within the floodway have been assessed. The amount of buildings that we found to be no damage is luckily 514, all the way down that 225 buildings were substantially damaged based on our estimates. 43 were completely destroyed. 9, the building owners went in there and just went ahead and it was bad. They just demolished it themselves, knowing that it was not recoverable. And so we ended up with 1,038 total estimated buildings. When we get into the substantial damage, these are the people that we are spending a lot of time with. We see that our commercial building stock was really impacted. So 36% of the commercial buildings in the floodplain were substantially damaged. Luckily for most residential, that was very small. It was only 4%. However, I would submit to you that for a lot of people, having your home damaged is a lot more important than your business. Both are equally critical. But the risk of losing your home is a really scary situation.
Hey, Clay, real quick. Is multifamily included in residential there, or is multifamily part of commercial?
This is manufactured housing. Sorry, yeah, that's a misleading. It does say multifamily. It is separate. It's treated separately because if water gets to the bottom floor of the manufactured house, it is automatically substantially damaged because of the nature of the systems in those buildings. Partially damaged, same kind of percentage. But the housing got a little bit of partial damage, because of the way Asheville is laid out. The Swananoa River Valley, the French Broad Valley, it's the commercial buildings that are closer to the river than most of the residential buildings.
And these numbers, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yep.
These numbers are from the zone that you showed us before going down Swananoa.
Yeah, there's a few that they didn't fly over, that like one went up Haw Creek, another one, there were areas, but that's the only flyover they gave us.
But these numbers are based on that flyover or all of Asheville city limits? All
of Asheville city limits. Any floodplain anywhere in Asheville. That it just so happens that is an interest. I felt it was an interesting graphic to just show, that we can actually look at where we're doing our work. We removed a lot of buildings from our tally, over 400 of them. We either found out they weren't in the floodplain, they were not in the city, there was no structure there before. And so like our data, this really shows you how critical it is to have up-to-date data. So we had documents or tax records that showed that there was a building there. We went out there and there was no building there. It had been removed long before Helene. It was a connected building to another building, so we had some duplicates. It was demolished before the storm, and we hadn't been able to keep that data connected. It's complicated running a city. It was a utility structure, which is treated solely separate, like some of these Duke substations, or it was just an open garage or something like that. So. And a lot of sheds. Sheds don't get estimated.
Does this data only reflect water damage? So if the property is in city limits, technically in the floodplain, but they had 3 trees come down and not have water?
If they're in the floodplain and they got damaged by both flood and tree, all of it is included.
Has to be in the floodplain though.
Yes, it has to be in the regulatory floodplain. But if it's outside of the regulatory floodplain, they don't have to worry about this. They can build back however they want. Yeah, I'm not even going to talk. Even if a building is vandalized after, that gets included. And so when we found out about that, we reached out to the city manager's office, told them that, and the patrols in these areas went up dramatically. Because if somebody came in and vandalized your building, you would have to include that into the amount of damage, even though it wasn't a part of the flood. So that was an interesting kind of impact that we learned. So here's our wordy description of what we do. I'm not going to go through this, but our job was to be there to listen to people, not to be regulatory. We all have roles in the regulatory process, but in this context, We're there to help them and explain. And the substantial damage part is a real important part, because it doesn't matter what you want to do. It matters what the conclusion is. In other words, you could say, okay, well, yeah, you said it's 60%, but I only want to do 40%, therefore I'm under it, right? No, it's a determination that's made. And so we have to walk people through that a lot. And we spend a lot of time helping people. You know, our data is really wacky, but it's what we have to do by law. And so we also have that relief valve that allows us to work with landowners and say, hey, if you have an appraisal or you want to get an appraisal, help us update it. Go get a contractor. Tell us our estimates are too high. We didn't go inside your building. We were on the outside and made assumptions about where things were located. Where is that heat pump located? Where is your electric meter? Things like that. So it's really about helping people.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
If you've got homeowners that are having to fight to basically prove that the assessed value is way too low to help that fraction, does that affect their property or their assessed value going forward in the future?
No.
Okay.
The assessment is counting, we're the city. That appraisal is confidential to us, and it only relates to the substantial damage estimate. We do not give those appraisers to the county so that they can change your taxes. This is the work we've done since January 21st. So we've met with 48 property owners already. We have 10 on the books for the next 3 weeks. The total number of people that we have communicated with, either via email, phone, or through what we call these fast sessions where we all bid, is 125. And so we're getting close to reaching everybody. We've also sent letters to everyone, an introductory letter telling us who we are, what we can do, how we can help. And now we're starting to release our draft estimates. And so the draft estimates will tell property owners, hey, based on our estimate, your property is substantially damaged. If you bring it back, you have to bring it back into floodplain compliance. That was an influx of a lot of calls and a lot of meetings when those draft letters went out. When the final letters go out, people have 30 days to appeal it. So we're trying to get everybody to communicate with us quickly so that we can fix it before we have to send out the final letters. And we're already late. FEMA is already on us. Got to get those letters out. We pushed it back a little bit so that we could engage in this outreach and connection and try and get people to update those conclusions so that we can make that determination. So the analysis, our final analysis is that 199 properties are substantially damaged. And those are our primary target audience to make sure that our estimates are good, and if not, that we can fix them. Everybody else we still talk with. People need to know how to do permits. Even if your property is not substantially damaged, if you put in a new electrical system, it has to be compliant with the flood regs. And that's good for the property owner too. They're already replacing the electrical system because it was submerged. Bringing it back so that it's got an extra 2 feet buffer means that the next time one of these 1% floods happens, your electrical system will be 2 feet above that. And then we removed, for a variety of reasons, 415 buildings. So 415 people don't even have to worry about it. 371, we determined to have no damage. So we've been able to take that scary number when people first talked about 1,100 buildings have been impacted by the flood, and we brought it down to a much more manageable number. And those are the people that we're trying to make sure that we help. And this has all been over the span of 3 months. It's been a lot of work. That's who we are. That's what we do. It's my personal insight on why I do it, but I've come to know the people on this team with me, several of who I have never met until this started. And we all share the same kind of empathetic drive to help the businesses and the property owners of the city of Asheville come back and let them get there. It's going to be a long process, but this is a unique team with a unique purpose and a unique drive, and it's already gotten some attention. I mean, I was going to make a joke about the Google kind of review rating of the city of Asheville permitting, but it's at 5.0. It's because there's only one review. I'm like, this isn't going to work. But I hear it. When people find out I work in the city, I get it all. It's like, I have an electrical permit in there, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. But we're different, and that'll happen. And so our post, after we get through all this substantial damage stuff, we're going to continue on for a few months and help the property owners who have submitted permits and shepherd those through. And that's where we come in, where we support the back end staff. If a property owner has a problem, they need to contact us, and then we'll find out what's going on with the permits and kind of facilitate the communication with that order that we have from the city manager's office and the council to do good work and help people come back as quickly as possible. So that's what I didn't do my key takeaway slide. But that's what we're all about. I know that's a much more micro issue, but from somebody who's been involved in it, it's pretty macro to a lot of people. We spent a lot of time with some of the business owners in Biltmore Village, a lot of time with the business owners in the Swananoa River area. And we think there's a lot of people out there that are still kind of in shock. And we want those people to come and talk to us first. We don't want them walking into the permit center and say, what do I need to bring my building back? They should be talking to us, tell us about what happened, how they feel, where they want to get, even if they have multiple ideas, and we will help them get there. So that's really what it's all about. Thank you. Yeah.
Quick question. Has FEMA redrawn the lines for floodplain?
They have not. There was some work in progress. That's all been kind of paused, but there will likely be some kind of reassessment, but we have no idea what that's going to look like. It's very clear. This storm, somebody in my office went back and looked at every single flood analysis, and there was this really incredible piece of work done in the 60s by the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, where they talked about flooding downstream. I think they're going to try and build some giant hydro plant somewhere. And that did research it back. And as far as we can go to 1785, where we only have anecdotal evidence about a flood, this flood was the biggest by far.
Even if you look at the LiDAR markings in different river basins, it's like there's nothing even close.
Not even close. Not even close.
Second question. I've been running a skid steer voluntarily for the last 6 months. Unfortunately, I kind of run out of money to do it voluntarily, but I want to keep doing debris removal. Do you guys have contracting opportunities through the FAST team, or? We don't. This is a very bad response, but luckily we don't do any administration of any program. Our role specifically is just helping people. I can connect you with somebody who might be able to answer that question. There's the whole personal property debris removal program, which is contracting with people to go into properties and get debris off. And I can put you in touch with those people afterwards and figure it out. Or if you can email me, I can introduce you directly. It has been a rapid response on multiple levels. And so that's a first question for me like that, but it's a good question. I appreciate that. I had a friend, when I was delivering water, after about the second week, it became clear to me that while drinking water is important, flushing a toilet went from here to here. And he was an auto detailer, and he filled up his tank, and he drove around to particularly the age-restricted housing, and would just come there and just dump his tank into 5-gallon buckets so people could have flush water. And he did that for about a week and a half. And so, yeah, it's crazy what kind of things you hear. And he would have done it more if he could have been paid. He had to go back and do his work. These are the kind of interesting things you don't think about until you're in the middle of a situation like that. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Should your contact info make your slides?
You can. I'm sorry, I didn't do. It's really tough. Fast at AshevilleNC.gov. And that email goes to the entire team. And so if you know, the reason why I am here, if you have clients or contacts or people that are asking these questions, send them to us. We will help them.
Fast at NC.gov.
AshevilleNC.gov. It's the standard Asheville email, which is fast in front of it.
And you might share your slides if we.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'll get those out to everybody.
Thank you both so much.
Yeah, thank you.